And hello, everyone, and we are live, episode 6, season 2. So today we have Kina and Sid from Balena, and we're going to talk about how they've enabled the AI64 for cloud deployments. Welcome.
Thanks. So I'm Kenna. I'm the product manager and project manager. I do a lot of things at Balena. A lot of times I end up being called the hardware enablement lead. My job is to just make sure that the process of bringing on new hardware is smoother than it has been. So I'm working on that through a lot of efforts. Sid, well, I don't know where he is on your screen. On my screen, he's here. But Sid is actually one of our partners, and so I'll let him introduce himself. But he's a really great partner. So that's how I want to introduce him.
Thank you, Kenna. Thanks everyone for having me. My name is Sid Gupta, and I'm a principal at Xylem Consulting. We're an embedded, all things embedded. We call ourselves full stack embedded guys because that's a skill that we think is a rare mix. And in my view, Balena is perhaps the OG full stack embedded company. It's one of those places where you can feel like you're dealing with a look and feel of a New Relic or a high level app developer. But then, you start to peel the layers and you're actually getting, you can connect and manage a fleet of embedded devices as if they were just, EC2 instances up in, AWS. So, huge fan of, Balena's, have been using it, have been a consumer and a user, sort of a power user for about 3 years now, 3.5. And then got introduced to the BeagleBoard ecosystem about a year ago through BeaglePlay, which I believe is now a year old. I think just over a year old. I think, and just fell in love with that platform as well. Just love the tooling, the engineering, the community, which is one of the big reasons why anyone would actually want to. If people are thinking of making a switch, choose something. So I can't say enough good things about the folks at both of these companies. Thank you.
I really appreciate the work that you've done here with BeaglePlay itself. Would love to know more about your history and the things that you've been I'm working on for BeagleBoard, right? Kind of when first getting started, right? It's always kind of lived as it can run embedded desktop-y stuff, even web servers, web browsers, kind of all the mix of things. But our focus has always been on making embedded devices. So I do a little bit of side work away from Beagle as well, and I'm also a Balena user personally, right? So in my own business, right? So taking good old BeagleBone Blacks and using Balena on those for a few years now. In deployments where we're doing remote monitoring stuff, and I just lost everybody.
Wow.
Oh, okay. Well, I can still hear everybody. That's good. So I'm been a big fan of Balena for a long time. Love it, and love to see the work that you've done, Sid, on enabling that on BeaglePlay, which I think is a far more capable device than BeagleBone, and simplified in a lot of ways for new users to get started. And having Balena on their, you talk about full stack, right? The ability to just have it working remotely, get into it, find all, deploy the apps that you want and control the device in the way that you need, and manage a large fleet of devices. I think the Balena tool is really fantastic for that. It's open where it needs to be. so that there's ways to plug into it in all the different ways. You don't need to use the website infrastructure, but it's there, and it's really great infrastructure. And so I've been a super happy customer of Balena for some time. I don't know if Kenna, you'll give us any overview so that people have some perspective on what Balena actually does.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to ask if folks already knew, but yeah, so Balena's basically a full stack containerized technology system for deploying and updating embedded devices. So we assume Docker. So if you're not containerized, that's maybe a stumbling block with us. But for anybody who comes from cloud technologies or is otherwise used to Docker, Balena is just a really nice way to get started with embedded. I came from a place where I never heard of Yocto. I didn't know about the different bootloaders there were in embedded. But if you knew how to write a Docker file, you could get something running on Balena. And yeah, so it's from a user perspective, it's all about getting your application on your device as quick as possible, and then being able to manage and troubleshoot and all of that stuff remotely, no matter how big your fleet gets. We have fleets that are in the hundreds of thousands. We also have fleets that are in the tens. It doesn't matter how big or how small. We can manage it through Balena Cloud. But I think one of the nice things, and Jason, you already mentioned it, is that Balena is kind of open by default. We're not always good stewards about documenting what's in there. We often consider our code to be the documentation because it changes so fluidly. It makes sense to just kind of say, if you want to know what's wrong, you're probably going to want to go look at the code. But from a user perspective, we try and do a better job of documenting. But yeah, the operating system that we use is fully containerized, so all the components in it are containers as well, and it's fully open sourced. And we have Open Balena, which is an open source version of the cloud infrastructure, but obviously you manage it yourself. And there are some capabilities that aren't fully fleshed out yet, because for a while there we kind of broke off how we were managing the cloud infrastructure versus Open Balena, but we're starting to merge some of that back soon. So we'll see some updates then. But yeah, so Balena is there for managing devices. It's good for developer workflows with CI/CD systems in place, and just growing with you from your first 10 devices to the 1,000 devices, what have you. And I guess my amazing point with Balena was just getting something working. I had been, before Balena, I had been deploying devices and managing fleets at scale, 50,000 devices around the world. But it would take us an hour or 2 hours, to get something up and running. And so you'd say, okay, well, I have 8 hours in a day. I can get somewhere between 4 to 8 devices deployed, and that's what I'm going to plan for. And then, you kind of do it that way. And when I first started with Balena and I got one up and running in, I think it was like 5 minutes, I just was like, where has this been all of my life? So, and then not long after that, I got introduced to the BeagleBone ecosystem. So this has been a really fun ride, learning about both. And yeah, I love it. And I love that, I guess what I should say is part of the reason that I'm here at all is that we're trying to make it so that Balena can work on any hardware as much as possible. And in the past, we've always done the integration to make Balena compatible with other hardware. But what we're trying to do is enable hardware manufacturers to do that themselves, and also to enable customers who have something very custom to work with an integration partner and get that enabled. And so that's why, I engaged Sid to help with us, because he already had familiarity with Balena OS and our dbus block. He had helped us work on that and get it created. So he already had familiarity, and is just a great person to work with. So he was one of the first people that I reached out to say, hey, would you like to be an integration partner, pretty please? And so he brought on the BeaglePlay as part of that effort.
You talked about is CI and DevOps, and I think CI and containerization, and I think a lot of the modern like DevOps tools and stuff might not be as familiar to embedded developers as it is web developers, right? Other classes of software developers, right? But it's if there are embedded developers listening that aren't familiar with doing CI/CD, using containers to both build and to deploy applications, you really should, because it's actually very practical. Balena's done a nice job of optimizing Docker to make it run well on embedded devices, and of course now embedded devices are also much more powerful. It's very practical in an embedded system, and it's a really great way to manage your software. And if you're worried about some of the other reproducibility aspects of it, right? The base Balena OS is based on Yocto, which I think is the best choice for reproducible builds for systems that you can't do with BuildRoot, right? I love BuildRoot itself for reproducible builds and having something very simple, but as you start getting into some more complicated things and the layers really start to make sense, and all the capabilities in the Balena OS. So I've had to go when doing custom hardware, right, go and customize the OS image and deploy that, and it's been a pretty great experience, right? But if you're an embedded developer, especially if doing embedded Linux, right, getting familiar with CI/CD tools, learning a little about containers, right, they're not that hard. I have a really love-hate relationship with Docker, much as I do with Python, but it really does streamline your workflow, right? Just the speed at which you can go and do things, right? So I've had to do a little bit of that customization. It sounds like what Sid's done though, has gotten into the deep innards of this. So I'm super excited about learning about how you brought Balena to BeaglePlay.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I was going to say, I want to say two things. One is Kenna's being a little too hard on as she should. She's sort of she's an insider on her own on Balena's documentation. I think it's as good. Obviously it expects a certain level of sophistication for the consumer. So it's clearly not a 101, but maybe it's a 200 level, course that you need. So I will say that, it's nowhere near as bad as maybe the impression you're giving, Kenna. Please give yourself.
Yeah, but the getting started. Yeah, because the getting started flow is so easy to just take an image, especially the deploy
Absolutely.
with Balena button, and then the Balena etcher, just create your flashcard, put it in, and go.
Yeah,
I mean, everything is so
the
streamlined.
The onboarding for customers is absolutely worth it. I mean, it's about as easy as it gets. I think what she was referring to was just if you're an enterprise customer or someone who's actually got a bit of custom hardware and is on the fence about, well, should we move to Balena or not? I think what she was referring to was sort of the documentation around how to bring your own hardware in. Yes. And even that, I would say, it's not like nothing's available. It's all there. There's a Balena masterclass. They've done a really good job sort of laying out in a very thoughtful way why they chose Docker and how they're using sort of a modified Docker supervisor. So, I won't get into the nitty-gritty there, but I think that's the one thing I want to say. And then the other thing that I think the good point you're making, which I'm going to reinforce again, Jason, is that it is super important for embedded engineers to realize, and I'm sure they do. It's just that most embedded projects realize way after the fact that they should have thought about firmware lifecycle management, right when they were actually coming up. So, because it's obviously easy to manage stuff when it's your fleets of 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 or even 50 devices. When you start to get into the hundreds or even thousands, you need to know how to manage campaigns and rollouts, right? And nowhere you're going to actually get that level of ease. You might get some fancy campaign management rollouts with other platforms, which I'm not going to name. But you're not going to get the ease of, being able to create a sandbox literally within hours and all the way up to like, hundreds of thousands of devices, and knowing that, you actually have it all, right at the click of a button. So, to me, we've all heard of infrastructure as code. And Balena enables infrastructure as embedded code. So it's IAEC, right? It's like a new acronym I'm just coining. But it's really, you can imagine writing, a GitHub repository with your application, and then another GitHub repository is just the Docker Compose file that maybe has these other repositories either as submodules or as linked in, and that's it, right? So the your IT and project management teams are going to be happy about saying, okay, we're not relying on somebody's local build machine. And of course, I'm not even here to talk about, because I'm not a Balena employee, but I can wax eloquent about, the build management system that you get through Balena. Right? You've got the Balena, you've got the Balena CLI, where you can actually build stuff, right from inside the Balena cloud, or you can bring your own. So all that stuff is I would say, right up there with the Terraforms of the world. Of course, Terraform's giving you a little bit more for your cloud, but I think it's a really nice, happy medium between all of these things. It gives you a lot of confidence and to feel like this is a solid platform to use. And now coming to your point, I think, yeah. So I mean, BeaglePlay. I think, where do I start? It's been a little bit of a trial by fire. Kenna and I were having a chuckle earlier today, this week, because I've been telling Kenna that I've been a Balena fanboy. How can I add value to the ecosystem? And of course, as she said, she very kindly invited us to do a Balenification task, and she gave me a list of a bunch of options. I think there was a few, there was a few other boards in there, but I immediately, I think it was because of that call that you and I had, Jason, where you mentioned to us that the Mars rover, there was a BeagleBoard on the Mars rover. So I was like, look, if we're going to Balenify something, I got to Balenify that platform. That's the platform. So call it sort of, foolhardiness, or I just didn't know what I was getting into at the time. I don't think even Kenna did. So we sort of just agreed to get that Balenification task started. And I remember that it took me like a day or two or three to get the Yocto open embedded layer build, right? So because obviously you guys have the sort of the out of the box Debian distributions for the flashers and the SD card images on the website. That was easy, right? So unboxing again the BeaglePlay was a breeze, and it just felt again really nice and solid. It just felt nice in my hand, right? Like you know what I'm talking about. We're all engineers here, so you can tell when something's just been built well. And having spent a lot of time with Pi 3s, and more recently Pi 4s have gotten, they've definitely improved their sort of their tooling and their engineering. But the point is, the BeaglePlay, unboxed, got it working. I think within a week I had the I had a Yocto build working with the Debian distribution, because there's a layer that's the Arago. How do you say it? Arago? I keep figuring. I don't know what the.
Arago for the Meta Arago for the Yocto layer for. Yep.
Yeah, right. So I had that working, and I was like, this is going to be easy. I mean, I'm a week in, and I've already got everything working. That was a year ago. So clearly it's. I think a lot of this is not have to do with how complicated it was. It was just definitely. I was working on a bunch of other things at the time. I was certainly devoting about 25 to 30% of my time on this Balenification task. But the sheer, there was a daunting mix of sort of figuring out how to get the bootloader working. This is a very interesting, complicated MCU. It's a chip, system on a chip. It has, I think it has the R5. I mean, it has like two different. I mean, the boot sequence is really interesting. And so I think getting that going, I think that took me about a month to figure out. Again, with a lot of assists from some Robert, who's not here, and I wish I could tell him to his face how helpful he's been. How on some of my darkest hours moments, I thought I'd brick the device a few times, and I'd be like, oh no, I'm gonna have to order another one, and he would be like, no, just do that magical finger trick where you can get it to boot up from a stock SD card. So yeah, I mean, it's been just a great learning. Obviously, along the way, we figured out just in general. I think we've managed to also come up with a way to standardize the onboarding of other partners like me for Balena. So like I think we've sort of not only figured out how to expand the Beagle ecosystem, but I think also to the Balena side to help them, onboard other people like me. And I think the ultimate aim here is to obviously add more devices into the Beagle, into the Balena orbit. And of course, the intersection with Balena, with Beagle is that any other Beagle devices that are downstream that are coming up will be that much easier for us to Balenify.
Well, that's really good because like we're doing modules now as well,
Nice.
so room for lots of if people want to take what they've done with the Beagle Play and kind of easily go to custom hardware. Maybe they need more Ethernet ports. Maybe they need something like a LoRaWAN connection, right? PoE or any of those like fun features they want to. Whatever they want to do with it, right? There's opportunity
for those not
them.
familiar with what Jason's showing necessarily. That's what's called an OSM module. So it's an expandable form factor solder-on module that can grow. So that's the size M module there. So you'd build your own carrier board, and then you can solder down the module that has the processor, PMIC, DDR, basically everything you need to get going. And then you just tack on your own interfaces. And that's just an example of a large development board that features a lot with multi-Ethernet, PoE, things like that. But you don't obviously need to build something that big. You can build something as small as you want, just very application specific. But then you don't need to worry about DDR routing and all the hard stuff.
So for the most part, you'd take the same board support package that you've done for Beagle Play and change the device tree in order to specify what hardware is on the board, right? So and that's not too hard to do with the Balena OS infrastructure. So
yeah, it's funny. I just did a webinar on custom device support with one of my colleagues, and we were talking about that because it's not documented anywhere. The device tree changes, but we're working on it. It'll get added very soon.
Yeah, because I mean, being able to set up your device tree, right? I mean, that's the part that ultimately pushed me to just do some custom builds. But once the build infrastructure is pretty straightforward, so like if you need to do it, it's not hard, but I think it can be even easier.
That's great.
So you got Beagle Play up and running, and
yeah,
I don't know when we're gonna see some of that live.
I'll let Kenna weigh in on the timelines, but yeah. So Beagle Play, we got earlier this year. We got everything. I brought it up, and I have it, joining a fleet locally. But to its credit, Balena's gone a lot more process heavy on. And I think again, I'm not here to pitch, and I don't even know if I'm allowed to speak about AutoKit. Am I? Or I just spoke.
Oh yeah. AutoKit is open source.
So AutoKit is an open source testing platform that Balena is open source, right? So they've essentially said that we will eat our own dog food. In other words, a patch, a port of Beagle of the Balena OS is not ready for prime time until it's actually running on this automated testing infrastructure. It's hardware testing infrastructure that plugs into the Balena CI/CD. And you have to think about it this way. So Balena CI/CD is constantly upgrading and updating the base OS, and it's a base OS that runs on hundreds of devices that have been officially Balenified. And I believe, and Kenna, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the process is every time a new release is pushed, into the CI/CD pipeline, it then essentially triggers these this connected web of AutoKit. They're just testing rigs to download the latest firmware, base OS, and run it through a bunch of very rigorous tests. So the idea is that if there's a BeaglePlay device that's been officially Balena-fied, long before Balena actually says, hey, we have a 5.7 version of our base OS that's available for download, you can be sure that it's actually been put through its paces on this piece of hardware. So I've spent the last 5 months setting up a Beagle and AutoKit here locally, and then debugging it, and so now it's plugged into the mothership, and I think the last PR that I submitted was, I think, it's on the verge of approval, so it's not quite there yet, but it is going to get pushed into the main line. We'll have a triggered AutoKit build happening soon, imminently, and then I think it's definitely not going to be months, I can assure you. Hopefully it's weeks, but I can't really say much more than that.
Yeah, we it's actually one of our tests is borked at the moment, and so that's why it's not out. And actually, none of our the changes we've made in the last certain amount of time is out. But the AutoKit got created for us because basically we had so many devices out there that we needed to test every new revision of the OS, and we just couldn't do it. We didn't have enough people, and we didn't want to throw more people at the problem. That seemed like the wrong answer because we'd like to grow past that. So the team created AutoKit, and it allows us to basically run every new version of the OS on the actual hardware and test it. And so if any of our tests fail, it doesn't get pushed to production, and it waits for us to work on that, fix it. And then once the test passed, then it can go to production. And it helps us keep the various versions up to date. If people have ever looked at Balena in the past, sometimes you'd see devices that were on really old versions, and you're like, why doesn't it have the latest? And it's like, the answer was there aren't enough people to test that one and all these other ones. So we're working on getting all of the devices we have supported in AutoKits. And then, as Sid said, for any of our integrators or any new boards being brought on, there's a baseline requirement that we won't even put it in the dashboard until it's passed AutoKit tests. But then it just seemed like such a nice thing to share. And there are certainly other people who've made things like this to test their hardware, but we thought, gosh, we had to create this for ourselves, but this is not our, this is not where we're trying to make a lot of money or something. So we just open sourced it so that other people could make use of it. And the hope is that, when other manufacturers are bringing on their boards, they'll be using this, but maybe anybody doing any kind of testing with hardware. We've got some folks that obviously hardware is their bread and butter, and testing with CI/CD infrastructure on hardware sometimes is not the easiest. So the software guys want to push updates all the time, and the hardware guys are like, hold on, I'm still pressing this button and trying to get this working. So so it's been really nice. It's such a cool thing that the team came up with, and we've had some manufacturers actually say, hey, we have something like this, and we'd like to kind of combine both of them for our testing. And the other nice thing is you don't have to limit yourself to the tests that we have. If there's something you want to test, let's say there's some port that we don't test natively, maybe you have something on Canvas that you want to test every time, you can add tests to the testing suite and get those to make sure for your repo, for your specific hardware, that's always being tested for the new releases as well. Yeah.
Can I just say one more thing about the AutoKit? Go ahead. I was going to say that it's the fact that it's open source is amazing. Like, this whole repo, of course, is open source. But what I think is also maybe a nuance that is lost is that it's. I think the guys that are behind it have gone through great pains to make sure that it can be assembled using hardware that can be sourced from anywhere. So there's no custom hardware that's actually part of this open source. And to me, one of the coolest little pieces of hardware that is part of this AutoKit is this SDMux here on the top left.
I was going to say the venerable SDMux.
Yeah, no, I love the SDMux. I didn't know that such a piece of hardware existed, and I love that you actually don't need to to etch a new, especially for flashing, devices that have onboard eMMCs like the Beagle Play, where we would have to basically before I was working with the AutoKit, I would have to basically etch a new image. Then I would have to wait for it to. I'd have to basically connect some sort of a serial interface to my Beagle Play, power it up, hold some of these user reset buttons and so on and so forth. And that's now all gone. It's all automated. Every time I have a new build, I just hit a button and I push it to my AutoKit rig. And 25, 30 minutes later, I have a result, right? And if all the results are passed, it means that the newest flavor of the Balena OS that I have just compiled or I've downloaded is working, right? And it's ready for prime time release. So I just love the fact that it's open source, and it's almost like, again, open procurement, right? It's like you can source these components from any vendor you like.
I really like the hardware implementation of it. Honestly, it's fun with the IKEA pegboard there. It's very, very internationally sourceable. And I guess you're doing USB HDMI. That's what it says there, right? With those, yeah. I'm pretty sure. Oh, I have the exact same adapter on my desk. Look at that right there.
Yay! Yeah, that was exactly the point. We want everybody to be able to get to it, because of course, our we're selfishly, we want to grow as a company. We want as many people with as much hardware to come to the platform as possible. So
yeah,
the easier that we can make this, the better.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I love that it's open source, right? Jason and I have kind of, especially for third-party vendors, I guess, because TI has their own internal test automation solution that's just kind of over serial and lets you toggle some, get some current measurements from the board, lets you push buttons on the board like reset, things like that, for when you don't actually want to hard reset the board. But we've talked about kind of in the future extending that to maybe like a card edge connector or something like that we could have like the Beaglified version of it, right, where it's like a low cost kind of test automation thing, and that this is something kind of interesting, right, that could kind of mesh those together as well.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys end up using any of this, please let us know, because we're excited to share about that too. I mean, all of this is hard stuff in the industry, and anything we can do to help make it easier for other people, we want to contribute in that way. But this is, there's so many ways that you could either improve on this or change it or what have you, that I know the guys that do the AutoKit pieces, Weepool and Ryan, are just, they love seeing other people doing stuff with them. So
yeah, for people watching, I don't know if people realize just how important these types of test automation setups are as far as general hardware enablement and software enablement is concerned, because even within large companies like TI, a lot of the reason why some drivers might not get tested or some things get pushed back, or especially on third-party boards, is that there is that testing infrastructure, right? If you don't have it, the amount of time you actually need to take to test a new board just balloons endlessly, right? And where if you have something like this that's just plug and play, it sits in a test farm somewhere, and you can iterate. I don't know what percent faster, but it's definitely 10x plus.
Yeah, no, I think that's really the power of it. That you nailed it. I think the test farm, and I think what's really, again, sort of the next level, mind blowing, not mind blowing, maybe that's too strong a term, about the way that I think Balena is imagining the test farm is that they don't even want to own the test farm. So it's not like they're running it inside in some colo somewhere. I mean, I think they have a bunch of colos, but one of the Beagle Play test AutoKit. Not the official one, but the one that's actually plugged into the official Balena fleet is actually sitting right here. It's right here. It's plugged in 24/7. So when the stuff actually gets deployed, this will be one of the test farms that will be reporting up its location. So if there's a failure, the early warning system is right here beneath my desk here. So, and I think it's a way for me to stay plugged in, right? I mean, it's great. I have a relationship, as a partner. I'm invested, obviously, in making sure that, more Beagle plays, Balena-fied Beagle plays are actually on the, inside the are using Balena, because it's such a beautiful marriage, right? It's really such a powerful marriage in my view. So yeah.
So if we kind of look around here, right? So the device under test here is on the left side here, DUA and DUA power supply, right? So it's just a power controlled switch, right? Or that the host can control, and then all the different peripherals here against the device under test. And I really like that you standardized on USB here, right? That I know that. Well, I'm not sure how much is controlled here, if it's other than just the power on the host, or if there's but whatever this host looks like, right? By standardizing on USB, right, that's probably going to have a fairly portable infrastructure for like analyzing and controlling the data going across each of these different interfaces, right? The SD card, the Ethernet, the HDMI, right? All being controlled over the USB, right? And that I really like that. Kind of giving one kind of common ground interface for the host testing framework to kind of gather data from the device under test and to perform the interactions, right? So I'm going to be really curious. Probably want to reproduce some of this, some of our CI flows, right? But yeah, so anything to comment back on that? Just trying to look at what the architecture is here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm glad you like the decision. I mean, there was a lot of thought, and I mean, this has been, gosh, probably years in the making at this point. We've had things kind of working here or there, but the first time that we really started moving things into AutoKit was last year. And so it's been so helpful to us, and it's just another way to scale. I mean, that's kind of what we think in general with fleets, right? Is you want to be able to grow your business as much as you want with your IoT devices, and we think the same thing with our company. Is anything we can do to automate, anything we can do to make it so that fewer people can do more things, we want to be able to do it. So that's kind of how it came to be.
Yeah, I'll say that
I think this lives in good contrast to stuff. I think this lives in good contrast to some other infrastructure that you'll see like this for like testing the kernel CI testing, or for the bootloader testing and stuff, all of which need kind of these lower level interfaces and like that, right? This is looking at more of how this is going to be deployed, right? The only power control here, right, is the power switch to the plug, right? There's no reset buttons or things have to work when you plug it in, and that's I like that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Jason, just to echo what you're saying, for about 9 months of the past 12, I've had obviously the UART to USB connector plugged into my development machine, because I use that as sort of that's my safety net, right? I can always bring up a serial console. What AutoKit, I haven't had to do that. I forced myself initially. It felt very unnatural to not have that. To essentially not have the BeaglePlay physically connected to a serial console that I could view. And now it's just it's freedom, because I can code out, I can hack on this stuff and hit a button and have a serial console open, but I'll have it's sort of complicated. I'll have to open up a Balena console, then I'll have to SSH into my host, which is at the top right here. But once I'm in my host, I can just open up a minicom, and then because the USB hub, what it does is it basically turns the serial output here into just another TTY. And so what's so powerful about that is that the freedom from having to basically touch wires it is powerful, especially again from a software development perspective. I mean, this is not quite sort of deployment's another beast and management is another. But just basically when you're in the sort of I'm developing software and I have a device under test and I need to make sure because my organization requires it, we're a CMM level 5 or what have you. I don't know, whatever the equivalent is, ISO 2024. But I think having those requirements fulfilled in this really elegant manner is really powerful.
I'm curious for BeaglePlay, did you do anything for the other interfaces like single pair Ethernet? You know, you've got the wireless interfaces. I'm especially interested in because it can support so many different wireless protocols, right? The flexibility there,
Yeah.
and you know, making sure, because I like a lot of IoT deployments with BeaglePlay, right? They'll be doing something like Open Thread, or you know, they might be doing, you know, the Matter, they might be over wireless.
That's a great question. The short answer is no. You know.
I have a Matter controller on my desk with BeaglePlay
Okay.
right now, actually. Ha.
No, we'd love to do that. I think the short answer is no.
Y-Sun, right? I think. Yeah. So I you know, because we can connect one more thing off to that hub, or if we connect to BeagleConnect Freedom, right? That we can use it as a gateway device that you could reprogram to communicate and check the wireless protocol stuff as well, right? So that's something I'd you know, I would do, right, for our setup right here, because we want to make sure that you're in your management, your deployments, right, that you're getting the firmware releases right, so that you can do things like Open Thread and Y-Sun and Zigbee and all those things that it can support.
Yeah,
I was
and
gonna say,
that's
part
kind
of
of
the nice thing about the architecture, right, is you could always add, just, you know, if you wanted to do soft resets, things like that, you just add a JTAG debug probe to it, and then you have OpenOCD. You could do, like Jason said, you know, add a CC1352, BeagleConnect Freedom. It's kind of open-ended, right? Power measurement the same way.
Yeah, I would just drop a BeagleConnect Freedom off the end here. We can always reflash the test, you know, firmware right from the host, and then you know, to test it with the deployment device, right? So I mean, I see how I could kind of fairly straightforward do like an Open Thread or Zigbee test farm here with this as well.
Well, Jason, if you want to set something up specific and test all the things, let us know, because I think that's something, especially now, we'd be interested in trying to, you know, because we test the basics. It's like Ethernet and Wi-Fi, and that's kind of it, because that's what we know will probably be on all the boards. But again, this has so much capability that's beyond just the basic things that we test. So it might be worth us trying to get together and figure out how we can test specifically for this device some extra stuffs, and that way you're always getting it with rolling
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll head to IKEA.
Perfect. They should give us a little bit of a bonus, like a commission for people buying their boards.
You get like a special color edition, right? Special
That's
color
right.
one.
The Balena edition, have it like etched in the side.
Etched, ha.
Haha.
Well, what haven't we spoken about, right? I think we still have a lot more to learn from Sid about
That's true.
his experience and what maybe, I mean, your background, your experience with BeaglePlay, you know, kind of next steps and like what
Yeah, and I'm curious,
you
because what we had
kind of
discussed
envision
is,
doing
was
with
this
this.
only on Play, or was this on AI64 as well?
No,
I supported, yeah. We had a different company that did the AI64 ICS, and then Xylem did the BeaglePlay. And so, yeah, I'm a way for us to get as many Beagle boards on as possible.
No worries.
As
But
part of
just to
the-
clarify, I guess on the Balena side, so it's both AI64 and Play now.
Yeah, and I mean, we
Very
support the BeagleBone Black and Green, and you know, some of the other devices as well. We try and keep up with you guys, but but yeah, maybe that, you know, anybody from the community could add that support at some point here, so that would be cool.
Yep. I look forward to RISC-V architecture support for one.
You and me both, Jason. I think we've been talking about it for years now. I'm like, oh, we're working on it, and then we keep getting, yeah, we're making some pretty big architecture decisions right now about a lot of things. Just rethinking, because I mean, Balena started this back before anyone had ever put Docker on ARM. We were the first folks to do that, and so it's been 10 plus years. So now it's kind of one of those where it's like, oh, we should check and make sure that our technology is still the best that it can be, and if not, make it so that it is. But yeah, I should let Sid talk about how he got started on the Beagle ecosystem, because it's fun to hear.
Yeah. I was going to say that. Yeah. So I think I've been talking about all the good parts, but as with every journey that's ended well, right? There were some dark parts. So I mean, I can touch upon some of those things. So I mean, there was a period in late fall last year where I managed to get the Yocto build up and running, but there was some device tree bug that had to do with the Wi-Fi regulator not being put into the right mode. That used to effectively manifest itself as a 300 plus second delay between the device booting up and anything useful happening. So effectively, you'd have to wait almost 5 minutes for the device to actually connect up to Wi-Fi. And so that's really what really got me, active and sort of posting. I would say I was posting it about once every month or so, or every 2 weeks on the BeagleBoard Discords. BeaglePlay, there's a BeaglePlay channel there. And so, of course, that's how, Nishant and I got acquainted. He was the one who actually pointed me to the E2E forum threads. So that's when I truly discovered, sort of the parallel nature of this community. There's clearly a solid overlap between TI's, team, and it sounds like there's a lot of folks that are full-time TI employees who actually are actively involved in the BeagleBoard Discord. And so again, props to him. He helped address both that and a hardware watchdog problem. So I found bugs. I mean, I found issues. I wasn't the only one to highlight them. So I felt happy that I was contributing back to sort of the improvement of the BeaglePlay itself, by discovering these issues. So again, it was. I felt good about giving back and not just sort of taking. But in the end, again, I think it was all all's well that ends well. We got the regulators fixed. I think it got merged upstream finally. I think a few months ago. Then I think the hardware watchdog fix. There is one that's out there which I haven't applied yet, but I will at some point soon. Once, but the compromise is that we have the hardware watchdog disabled in the current Balena implementation as sort of a compromise, because what it was doing was basically putting the device into this doom reboot loop. So those are the two sort of I would say big points of places where I sort of felt like, I'd hit a dead end. There were some others, like it had to do with the fact that the official sort of Flasher XFCE firmware image was still a 5.10 based kernel, base. So there was a decision point earlier this year where it was mostly me. It was me just sort of like, chipping away at this stuff. But I think Robert's pretty good about, he'd be like, oh, no, this doesn't work. You should just try this latest kernel. And so we made a decision ultimately to switch to the 6th. I think we now have a 6.10 based or a 6.7. I forget which one, but it's a 6.x. Yeah, it's a 6.1. Yeah, so it's a 6.1 kernel from BeagleBoard. And that's just, working nicely. I'm quite happy with it. And yeah, so I mean, I think overall, that's done, and there was definitely a U-boot sort of overhaul earlier this year. So I mean, we were playing catch up with some of the developments from earlier this year, where I believe there was a lot of fixing that had happened and merging back into the upstream mainline. But I think we've now played we're sort of now synced up more or less as of maybe a few weeks ago, maybe about a month ago.
I'm curious as to how far you're off of vanilla. Personally, like I've been running like builder vanilla against the vanilla like 6.6. Basically since 6.6 one has been Beagle Play's been pretty solid. I may not have um, been bothered by boot time issues or whatever the other things you might have seen. Um, so those might simply not have affected me, but
Yeah.
I'm not aware. But 6.6 since 6.6 vanilla upstream, I've been pretty happy with the Beagle Play in mainline.
Okay.
And so I'm generally not running Robert's Beagle kernels personally, just because I want to try to eat the upstream dog food, right? So like I want to live with the upstream bugs, and I just haven't. Since about 6.6, I haven't really noticed them. So if you're still on a 6.1 Beagle, I'm curious what Beagle kernel. I'm kind of wondering what.
Yeah, it is definitely a 6.1. It's not a 6.6. And I think this brings up an interesting point, because for us, we don't want to be as close to the upstream as I think you are. I mean, so I think from my perspective, I have to wear both the Balena hat here and the, and the consumer hat, and obviously the Beagle Play hat. But I think we would love to have something that you might deem the LTS, right? Like for what it's worth, like, a 3-month validity LTS, and that's fine, right? Like if you say, look, if you've been on a 5.x, you ought to move to 6.1, because that's been out in the wild for the last 3 months, and then I think that process and that cadence makes a lot of sense for the official Beagle Play, for the official Balena 5 version of Beagle Play. And of course, in a month or two, when 6.6 has been stabilized, and I'm assuming, so I think this cadence is a part that I'm not really clear on. I don't think there's an automatic, trigger on Roberts' part, and he's not here to sort of speak about it. But it almost feels like it's a little bit more reactive with him. So he's like, oh yeah, by the way, that's been fixed. Let me go and push that.
Yeah,
there's a little bit of both, right? So he has mainline kernel builds that just get automatically built and pushed, but like the reactive part's more about fixing issues on kind of what he's considering like kind of the stable release that he's pushing out in the default images, right? Where he wants to see stay as close to the TI kernel and what the official TI kernel release is at any one point. And I don't know if the official TI kernel has moved to the 6.6 LTS yet.
No, it's about to. I think we're still on we're on 5.11 for the longest time, and then I think it's been 6.1 for a bit, and then 6.6 soon. I think in mid-August.
I mean, I was going to say that we basically, on our side, our Meta Balena BeagleBone layer, at least the one that I have for Beagle Play, my source URIs are all the Kirkstone branch of the MetaTI layer, on git.ti.com.
Yeah.
So I mean, whatever happens there is what I will get, right?
Yeah. And the reason for that is like from what I remember, at least, is historically there's been just things that haven't been cleanly merged upstream fast enough. So it's usually been things like Ethernet drivers or sometimes like PMIC drivers, things like that, kind of semi-adjacent to the SoC, but things would break. Like CP switch had issues for a while on mainline. I think it's been fixed now. But it's things that took a while to upstream, so that's why Robert would kind of stick close to the TI branch.
Well, I don't know if now is a good time to take us back, but before we started recording, Sid was sharing about how he started with BeagleBones and how he used to only know the Raspberry Pi, and I love that story. So I think he should tell it again.
No, and I'm happy to, absolutely. So I in a previous life, I ran an IoT. I ran a software company for a while in India, and we would do. We were essentially building a field force automation solution where we would have people have. We were using Bluetooth beacons to track. It was sort of like an indoor positioning system. And we the use case was fairly straightforward. We have a big factory floor, or a large building, and we want to know what the occupancy is. And so we had worked with a vendor in Italy to get these really nice compact BLE beacons that would have a 5-year battery life that you could just plug into a card holder. And so people wouldn't even know. I mean, obviously this was a company, so I mean, legally, I think we were sort of okay on solid ground because we weren't really tracking people at their homes. But when it came time to deciding, what to build gateways out of, the 3B was the natural choice because it just felt ubiquitous. It was just there. Right? I mean, if you think about this is about 10 years ago. 10 years ago. The pie was everywhere, was having its moment in the sun, and we were super happy with it. But there's an anecdote here that things get interesting here, and you don't even know this story yet, Kenna. We standardized because I've been a software guy for a while, because we're all. And so for me, process was key. So it was not enough for me to just build a science project. I wanted to know that I could manage this stuff at scale. So long before, Kenna and I met and I was introduced to Balena, I was looking for Balena. I just didn't know it existed at the time. And so I don't know if you remember, but this is sort of ancient history, but Android things was a thing. They bought Brillo, and they were selling it, and they were like, look, and at the time, by the way, I had another side of my company, and my business was developing apps on the Android development platform. And so they said, well, if you have Android developers, you can actually build for your Pis, any embedded devices, and nothing changes. You can use the exact Maven build tools, and I loved it. I loved the idea. I loved the concept. I went all in. And fast forward to January of 2017, in a blog post, they announced that they're going to stop supporting it. They just did a rug pull on us. They did another Google Glass, and it was the most. I've never been as mad, and I've never recovered. So I now have essentially like a visceral hatred for all things Google. I think they're a one-trick pony. I mean, they're a nice company and everything, but I'm never ever going to use them for anything. At scale or anything other than that just makes money for them in their search business. So we quickly sort of fell into the arms of Mender. I mean, Mender was around, and we were using Raspbian, and so for a while that was basically the solution we used. And and then to fast forward to 2021. I come on board, and we're working with gateways, with Helium gateways, no less, and these are all being poorly managed by a company that we now know raised a lot of money, was sort of in this beautiful hype storm, perfect storm of hype, but they didn't really sort of know how to manage their devices. You had a lot of these gateway manufacturers, whether it was Rack, everyone had their own sort of strategy. And Balena just fit this world perfectly because we were like, oh my God, we've got Balena. We can actually write our own firmware, and then we can deal with updates to any of these packet forwarders, which are the things that actually take the radio, the air interface packets, and then forward them up to at the time the Helium cloud, and not have to worry about the underlying OS. So yeah, we had an amazing time, and my introduction to Balena happened. And then fast forward to 2023, which is last year, and just seeing how solid the BeaglePlay engineering, and just it's the first and probably the only device that I've seen truly represent how long it's been on. So like if you plug in a BeaglePlay device to Balena, and on your fleet, you can tell you how long it tells you how long the device is being plugged in. My Pis would always, even with like perfect sort of internet connectivity and power, invariably I'd see them, blink out after about a month. I'd say, okay, because I knew that my Pi had been online for 6 months, but I'd only see an uptime of 30 days. Not so with the BeaglePlay. I mean, I've just had it running, for weeks, months on end, and it's truly representative of how long it's been online. So that's again, like it's a downstream representation of how solid the engineering is. So again, very happy about
I had to
thought
move
it was
apartments
secretly.
recently, so unfortunately I had to turn it off. But my Beagle Play was at 8 months uptime on Home Assistant, and I got to the point where I was actually avoiding trying to do any updates that would require me to restart because I was like,
Yeah.
okay, realistically, I like the uptime number.
I know, it's great. I love it. I've never seen uptimes in the multiple months, but especially on my Balena dashboard. So again, these are little sort of symptoms and hints that tell you how whether what the tooling in a device is. So yeah.
It's been a while since we've asked people in the Beagle community what their longest uptimes were, but we had some that were in several years, even
Wow.
on sailing vessels, like control systems for sailing vessels that were up for years. So I need to start some on my own just to put it off in a corner somewhere. I haven't done that. So
yeah, you
I've
need a
got an
leaderboard,
AI64 here
Jason.
that's been up for about a year.
Yeah.
It needs to do something though, because if you're just having it idle, it's cheating, and it's not online.
Yeah.
Be online.
What were you saying, Sid?
Oh, I was just going to say you need to have a leaderboard, Jason.
Agreed.
Yeah. Let's start one. I think we need to put it on the forums.
Yeah.
So
Get everybody fighting.
Look for the forum post leaderboard here shortly.
Awesome.
Kenna, how do we get started with all of this? How do we get started with Balena? How do we? I know the AI64 you can now deploy. I think it's a little bit different now doing V8 images versus V7. I think you need to be a little cognizant of kind of which one you start with, right? Because I think all your builders and stuff are going to go to that architecture, but I mean, but it's already showing in the GUI and everything with AI64. When do we think we'll see Beagle Play, or is there a way that we can get started with Beagle Play now?
Yeah. So Beagle Play as soon as possible. As soon as we fix the bugs in our testing suite, it will be there because Sid's already got it passing all the AutoKit tests locally. So it's just some stuff that we know we need to deal with that is stopping some builds right now. So, but it's ready. So as soon as we get our site fixed, I had hoped that it would be ready for today, but it should be there shortly. Like Sid said, probably a week or so. I would prefer it to be days, but just to give everybody time to breathe and actually troubleshoot, we'll say weeks. But yeah, the AI64 and the black and green are all out there already. And what's nice is, with Balena Cloud, you get your first 10 devices free. It's fully featured. And that's, infinitely, we don't time cap that today. So if you go on and you sign in, you use an email to sign up. And then from there, you can just add a device and you choose which one you want out of the list. And so you could find the AI64. And we have a getting started guide. And it's another kind of fun thing. And actually, Weeple, the guy who worked on AutoKit as well, he helped automate all of our getting started guides. So just to be excited for a moment, we have a list of contracts that basically includes the process for booting up a device. And so all of our getting started guides are automatically generated using that information. So anytime we push something to the dashboard, it's automatically added to the getting started guides too, which is really nice.
Very nice.
But,
very, very nice.
Yeah. So anyway, you can go to the getting started guides and you can just pick from the drop down your board and then whether you want to use Python, C++, or what have you, and it'll show you the process for that. And then there are some sample applications at the bottom that you can test and push. But yeah, getting a device flashed and everything will probably take you 5 minutes once we have the Beagle Play up. So yeah, check out the getting started guide and yeah, hopefully it's simple. If it's not simple, let us know because we want to fix that. If you run into problems, please reach out. We try to make that as simple as possible.
Yeah, and
I want to get that.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to say that one of the nice things about the flasher type of images that you download today, especially for the BeaglePlay. We have a flasher image, which means that we'll give you an SD card that you etch, and then you plug in and you power up. And all the time, if you connect this device that's being flashed to the to the internet, and you have your dashboard open, it'll actually come up even before the flashing is complete. It'll actually tell you, oh, we've actually detected the device. It's now being flashed. And the flashing, when it completes, will actually show up on the dashboard and say, please unplug, please take out the SD card and power up the device again. So it's really just those little, it's a nice onboarding. It just feels nice. You feel like you're sort of
quality of life thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good quality onboarding. It just feels like, okay, I'm not being left to my own devices here. I don't have to worry. I'm not going to wait for for these LEDs to stop flashing and wondering, you can actually have this BeaglePlay completely unattended. You don't have to have it plugged into anything. Just, power it up. Just make sure that it's obviously connected to an Ethernet port, and then have a dashboard open with your BeaglePlay dashboard, your Balena dashboard open in your fleet, and you'll see the device show up even before it's been flashed, which is really powerful.
Yeah. And you can provide the SSID and keys if you want to put it on a Wi-Fi network, right? So that's pretty slick, so that you can kind of do that for deployment. But Ethernet for first time. Getting started, right? It's free. You can try it with the 10 devices. There are ways that you can swap. Essentially, you can use Open Balena to kind of go around. If you want to do your cloud infrastructure, it is actually open enough. All the code is there, so you can kind of you can go out and do some of your own fleet management if you want. But once I think you get experience with the Balena Cloud, you'll kind of see that it's worth it and it's nice, right? And what you're paying for is the support and the cloud infrastructure, right, that Balena provides. And I think, if you're doing something professional, that you'll find it's worth it. If you're doing something as a hobby or for fun, it's still worth doing. It's a great way to manage your devices, even if you just have a couple in your home that you want to be able to do remote management on. So and you don't have to feel like it's a dead end, and it's built on open technology, right? You can see how to build the Yocto image, right? I think it's a development process flow that's going to pay off in the long term, right? I think you want to learn to use containers to deploy your applications, and learn from the usage of Balena, even if you're not planning on going into making products with it. You'll kind of love the experience, and kind of see its value. I'd love to see Snag Boot kind of brought in. So the SD card is one thing, but you can also just run Snag Boot on a computer and bring up the eMMC as a as a SD card target, right? So you can just directly flash without using an SD card. That's kind of a wish list item for me. I know that I'll be getting I'm shopping IKEA over here in the other window, and we'll try to reproduce AutoKit with some extra goodies. But I think one of the big ones for me is doing some more test infrastructure for the microbus add-on boards, like the click boards from Microelectronica, and other microbus add-on boards with the click ID. Has an opportunity, I think the more test infrastructure we can provide there, I think this would be a good framework for us testing a lot more of these different add-on boards, because they've got like 1,500 different sensors that you can use, and now they've got the one-wire EEPROM IDs. We worked with them on that technology, so that the boards would be self-describing and the drivers would just automatically load, because I think a lot of the Balena users really don't want to do that side of development, right? They just want to sense something, and right, and you're doing an embedded device. The point is to actually sense something and interact with things in the physical world, and the BeaglePlay is really suitable for that with the addition of the microbus add-on boards, right? So giving you whether you want to do air quality or light, current sensing, just yeah, 1,500 different sensors and actuators and stuff, and that's kind of the point, I think, of where we end with all this on the hardware side, right? Is getting down to some new physical interface, something we want to monitor and control out in the physical world, right? And then having this glorious Balena front end to it all. So I'm super excited for this. I think this is a big missing piece for the BeaglePlay ecosystem. It's one that in my personal projects I will make extensive use of. So I have some applications that are going to be using this pretty quickly.
Yeah, I
So
look forward to
I'm
playing with
super
those.
excited about it.
Yeah, I think we're at the top of the hour, so thank you very much, Kina and Sid, for joining. Really appreciate you. It's been great. We definitely have a lot of kind of takeaway points to go play with after this. I definitely need to try Balena. Jason already is using it. But we'll get that forum leaderboard going up for uptime and see if we can maybe feed stats directly from people using Balena. We'll see. That'll be fun. And yeah, again, appreciate it. We'll definitely need to have a follow up on this as time goes on, especially if you guys get Beagle Y app eventually or things like that. So looking forward to it. And there'll be links in the description for everyone. So check out Balena, check out the onboarding process, and otherwise, we'll definitely catch up on the Discord and outside of that. Thanks
Yeah,
everyone
thanks
for
for having
joining.
us, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.